Pink. Nate Royce, just give me a reason. BBC Radio Shropshire, let me introduce you to Shane Senior. Good evening.
Good evening, Mark.
Now, you are an author now.
That's
motivational
right, yeah.
speaker. Just talk me through your portfolio, what you do.
So apart from being a businessman involved with business acquisitions, I'm also, as you just said, motivational speaker, constantly inspiring now to get onto the larger stages that are currently available. I've done a lot of speeches, different events and stuff that I've run myself, but it's generally of the smaller nature.
Okay.
So right now I'm pushing myself through my career to get onto the larger stages to deliver my inspiration and motivation in front of the thousands.
Right, so start at the beginning, business.
Yes.
What's your career journey been like in that? Because I guess that's where you draw most of your experience from.
Yeah, and it's part of my journey as well, which sort of led me into the stage that I have of inspiring people in the millions, you know. It started back at the age of 16, going in the Royal Marines Commandos. I left probably about 4 or 5 weeks before passing out, you know, due to unforeseen circumstances and a bit of a change of heart, really, more than anything. And I'm quite glad that I did leave because, you know, a lot of the guys and comrades that I knew passed away. So, you know, and I think life's put me in a journey for a bigger mission than what I was destined to do.
Did that feel like a setback at the time?
Certainly did, yeah. You know, I've had many setbacks throughout my career, many things that I've either failed at or I've quit, you know. Back then I was a quitter. I quit prior to when I should have been. You know, I should have finished what I was doing and I should have gone to Afghanistan 3 days later. You know,
when you get home and you are alone with your own thoughts and you have something that I guess in time has been a good thing that you didn't go down that route because you've achieved success elsewhere, but at the time feels like failure, feels like you've quit, as you just said. What's that like for you, or what was it like then?
Well, back then it's just like many of the people that are out there and all the listeners we've got on air now. You know, when you fail at things in life at the time, you feel just, you know, completely disheartened. You feel like there's no hope and there's nowhere to really go in life. But it's not until that I've learned what I've learned in the last sort of 2 to 3 years, which we'll talk about in a moment, which has sort of turned my life around. And, you know, and failure is actually a success. Okay. And failure is actually a win that many people don't see that at the time.
Well, you can't get better unless you fail, can you?
Yeah.
Because you have nothing to learn from.
That's right, yeah. And if you look at every successful person, entrepreneur, businessman that's gone through his career, they've all failed at something. And unfortunately, that's what we all have to go through in life, because when you make mistakes, that's when you learn.
What did you do then when you were 17 and you'd not gone down the road that I guess you'd expected to commit the bulk of your life to? How did you start again?
Yeah, I suppose that was something I inspired to do since about the age of 13. So, you know, it's a bit of a shock to the system. It's kind of, right, what do I do now? And at the time, I sort of got involved with sales, and I worked in various sales roles, probably for 4 or 5 years, in and out of sort of construction as well. So interior kitchen designers, you know, site plasterer, you name it, bit of in between of this, bit of that, bit of this. Nothing really that exciting.
Nothing stable either.
Nothing stable, nothing exciting, bit boring, you know, got work in the usual 9 till 5 job, and I wasn't happy. You know, wasn't happy. Did have a bit of an inspiration in 2011, I think it would have been, and I was aiming to become a professional MMA fighter, in which I had my...
Okay.
Yeah. Bit of a,
that's another tangent.
Yeah, that's it. There's many tads to the bag, you know, and each stage that I've been through has built me stronger and it's taught me something, and I've learnt along the way. And that's how I've got where I have today.
Talk to me about mixed martial arts then. How did you get into that and where did that go?
I think that was something that just sort of came, again, from my younger years, you know. I think as you're a teenager, you think you're this big, tough, hard guy, and it's kind of the case of, right, let's prove that I am a tough, hard guy. You know, so it was kind of something... You
do get to an age, don't you, as a man, I think, and you do think, right, let's show everyone now. And that's a phase we all go through, isn't it, I think? Yeah,
I think that's it. You're just trying to prove people wrong,
Maisie works on the show just asked me, when's mine coming? Wow. Clearly not exuding much masculinity here. So you got into MMA then, literally to prove that you wanted to fight?
Yeah, and it was something that if I would have continued, I knew I would have been good at it. Right. Again, like all aspects of life, you have things that you're good at and things that you're weak at. And when it comes to MMA, I was always a good stand-up fighter. That's something I've always had. If you want to box me, you know, kickboxing, that's something I was always good at.
Yeah.
Ground, now doing your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as an example, that was always my weakness. I've never been flexible, so it was always something that when I'm on the floor, I wasn't as nimble as some of the smaller guys, and you know, and ultimately that was how I lost my amateur fight, which was actually, Here in Shrewsbury, that was at the Sports Village in front of over 1,000 people. It was a night to remember. It was a bit of a mad night where everyone ended up getting kicked out in the end. For the police turned up. There was a riot of about 1,000 people throwing chairs, tables.
Wow.
It was a crazy atmosphere.
That must have been a buzz, though, with the entrance and the fact that you're there all of a sudden against an opponent. Are you able to appreciate the crowd, or does it all just draw in? When I've had those experiences, and I've really low-level kind of boxing training and stuff like that, it's like there's nobody else there.
Yeah, and I think the problem is with any sort of training like that, you're going through all your training, you're doing your 6 months training camp ready for your fight, and nothing can really prepare you for when you're in that cage or ring. If you're a boxer, nothing can really prepare you for it, because you can't see nothing. All you see is a big bunch of bright white lights booming in your face. A bunch of people are shouting and screaming. You can just hear your name, and that's about it. You can't see nothing else apart from bright lights. Now, of course, no matter how much training you go through, it does not prepare you for that situation. So it's it's a little bit like many of the things you go through in life. The only way you can accomplish and overcome that fear as such is to just throw yourself out there and do it. Yeah.
Did you enjoy it?
I did. And again, I'm very blessed, because when I gave that up, that actually led into the next life turning point of my career.
Okay.
Because I then started to bulk up, because at the time my trainer made me lose a ton of weight. He made me go all the way down to lightweight, which really was about 2 stone.
How tall are you?
6 foot. Yeah.
I mean, a 6 foot lightweight. You didn't eat for months, did you?
No. All I had was a fish and an apple pretty much most days. It was I lost 3 stone in about 3 months.
What's the lightweight limit in MMA?
70 kilos. And naturally, I've always been around 85, so it was a big drop for me to take. Did have its effects on my energy levels, and I felt a bit constantly exhausted. So I thought, right, I'm going to go back to the size I told him I wanted to fight at. So I thought, let's start doing some weight training. Let's bulk myself up. 3 months down the line, what does that then lead into? I now fall in love with the weights.
You're a bodybuilder now.
Now I'm a bodybuilder. Yes.
It's incredible.
Yes. And that was actually quite funny, because that was the life turning point of my career, when I actually ended up meeting my wife through bodybuilding.
Okay.
And if I
in the gym?
In the gym, in the gym.
How did that work? She was benching heavier than you, and you were impressed.
No, not quite that. No, my wife was always at the time attracted to big, muscular guys, and luckily I just fitted the criteria at the time. So
you ticked enough boxes.
That's right. So I ended up then doing bodybuilding
Competitively.
Competitive, yeah. I competed in my first show in 2015, and I came second in the NAB at England 2015. Yeah, and I came third in the USN finals, which was the same year.
How does that work then? Competitive bodybuilding. What's it? What do you have to go through to win? For those who don't know.
For those that don't know, a ton of steroids.
Right.
So, cut the long story short, it's not just the steroids though. There's intense amount of training.
So is that legal within bodybuilding?
It is in the UK, yes.
Right.
We're quite fortunate enough to do it in the UK.
Is it fortunate, or does it have terrible side effects?
There's a bit of a mix, and this is something I am actually going to write a book about a bit later down in my career, and that's there's positive and negatives, a bit like anything in life. And I'm not.
Do you have to seek a doctor's support? Because I imagine it's quite dangerous.
It is, and this is the problem. Why again, this is why it's something that I try to push, because there's so many youngsters now that are under pressure from things like magazines. They see movie stars, they see top athletes, and they're under pressure to look like them, but yet they don't realise that every single one of those takes steroids. There's no ifs, there's no buts. I guarantee you, every top boxer, every top athlete, footballer are taking some kind of performance enhancing drugs, whether it's anabolic steroids or whether it's just something to improve their blood flow into their musculars to allow them to breathe for longer. Because there is actually steroids that give you an increase to heart rate. So it actually allows you to breathe for longer and without getting exhausted.
Is that a case then of the governing bodies not banning everything? Sort of having enough wriggle room within the laws to take.
I think it's one of those that it's been in there for a long time, especially bodybuilding. Steroids have been a well-known part of it since Arnold Schwarzenegger's days. Yeah. But back in Arnold Schwarzenegger's days, it was a lot easier to obtain them, especially in places like the US, when you could go to your doctors and get them. Now it's all fully it's illegal in the US.
Yeah.
UK we can still use them. You can't go and pick them up as a prescription from your doctors like you used to, but they're readily available anywhere. There's no way you can't get them.
So how did that journey end through bodybuilding? If you were, or are you still doing it?
No, that's long gone now. Again, it was one of those things where I loved it at the time, but it takes up a lot of your time. The diet, the nutrition, the training, everywhere you go, it's a lifestyle that totally takes over. and it is time consuming and it's tiring. And people don't realize that the life of a bodybuilder is a very emotional one, because you go through stages, right? You're bulking up on what's called your off season. Right?
Okay.
So this is when you're trying to build mass and muscle onto your frame. And to do that, you have to overload your body with a huge amount of calories. Right. So you go from having, let's just say your average is 3,500 calories a day, to now you're having 6,000 calories. And that's what you need to do.
You have time to have a job, to hold a job down, because you're going to be eating or working out for most of the day, aren't you?
Yeah, and this was, again, another unfortunate situation that I had at the time when I was doing my sales roles, and it did sort of take over, because you go to work, you're quite miserable. And this is one of the things that people don't realise, is they see the fact of, he's on steroids, this is affecting his emotional state of mind. But it wasn't. It's actually the diet. People don't understand that the diet takes over. You're absolutely exhausted one way or another. You're either overeating to the point where your stomach's just ready to burst and you're exhausted and you're tired from the gym. And then when you're on your on season and you're cutting up ready for a show, and you're now having to drop 2 stone and drop.
So you get that definition.
That's right. Yeah. That's whatever you would have seen it already. The bodybuilders, you get that cut vascular, veins popping, all that sort of stuff requires, again, 3 to 6 months, depending on what show you're doing and how intense and that your off season's been, as to how much weight you need to drop.
Wow.
So it's
that's almost counterintuitive, isn't it? To bodybuild, then, in the run up to a competition, you're actually actively reducing.
Yeah, and that's a massive psychological effect, because you've just spent 6 months getting as big as you
like
possibly
a waste
can.
of time.
Yeah, to now, hold on a minute, now I've got to drop it all. But of course, when you drop, your aim is to keep as much of that muscle mass as you possibly can and lose the water and lose the fat.
Yeah,
that's the aim now. So generally, you will lose a little bit of muscle along the line when you're dropping, but your aim is to not, drop as much as you hope so.
So was that a case of burnout? I don't want to live like this anymore.
It was a bit of a life turning point, really. It was more the money at the time. I think at the time it was more like, right, I'm spending $3,000 a month here on steroids and diet and nutrition, and people don't realise, again, the cost of bodybuilding. I'm spending a lot of money which I could be investing, and it's taken up a lot of my time. As I stated already, it's a massive lifestyle change. It does impact ultimately.
Did you get negative side effects from the steroids?
Yeah, you do. There's absolutely a ton of negative side effects.
Like what?
Acne's probably got to be the biggest one. But again, once you educate yourself, there's a steroid to counteract the side effects of every steroid.
So you end up almost in an arms race with yourself.
You just pile them on and on.
Which again is dangerous in itself.
Before you know it, you start off with 2. You say, right, I'll just take some testosterone and dianabol, which is a general course that somebody would take to bulk up. And before you know it, you're taking 10, 20 different things, because you're counteracting that side effect. You're taking this side effect. Then when you see the results, you're like, right, let's just chuck this one in, I'll gain a little bit more muscle this time. And you do. And you see more results. And that's kind of where the addiction comes from. Steroids themselves are not actually an addictive substance, but it's the results what makes them addictive, because you see how good you look. You feel like you're invincible. Yeah. And this is where a lot of the idiots come from that take steroids, because you would have seen people like in the papers at the weekend, just people go out drinking on a Friday night. Yeah. They've got cocaine in their system, or weed, or whatever it is, recreational type of drugs, and then they've got anabolic steroids in their system as well. Right, okay. And all that's going to cause is that's just a cocktail of not necessarily anger, it's just overconfidence. Oh, right, okay. Because, like things like cocaine.
And that's where the roid rage that you hear about would come from.
That's where you hear, and most of it, most people that take steroids very rarely get roid rage. It's generally the idiots. It's generally the idiots that mix it with alcohol and mix it with cocaine's probably got to be the biggest one that you see so many idiots mixing it with. Right. Because your confidence just goes through the roof. When you're on steroids, you feel like you're a golden, you can achieve absolutely anything. Yeah. And, cocaine, marijuana, marijuana does the total opposite. It tries to your body's trying to calm down, and then your body on the steroid side of it's trying to go crazy, and it just
was that a difficult lifestyle to get out of, in the habit of exercising and the routines and the eating and the supplements and the drugs and everything that goes with it?
Yeah, it's a big shock to the system. It's a big shock. You're used to getting up every day, doing your usual thing, and going from training 6-7 days a week, 2-3 hours a day, to right, let's cut this down to 5 hours a week. Yeah. To sort of like 1.5 hours, keep it sort of normal, because generally you can't do much more than 1.5 hours of training. No one really needs more than 1.5 hours. Bodybuilders and top athletes do a lot longer than that, because they're taking drugs. Right. Ultimately, when you're taking any type of anabolic steroid, you can train for a lot longer and you will recover a lot quicker. You can go and have an intense lifting 300 kilo. Let's say you're squatting 300 kilo. at 8 a.m. in the morning. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're ready to do it again.
What did you move on to next after bodybuilding? Because I get this is, you have projects, don't you? What was your next one?
Well, that's it. Up until recently, you know, in the last sort of 12 months, I've never really stuck at anything and known exactly my purpose. And after that, I sort of did a bit of private security, international executive protection.
Okay.
So again,
like in a blacked out car and
and again that comes from
an earpiece.
That's right, yeah. And I just did a bit of that, a bit of static security as well at other events in the UK. So like race courses, you know, Wembley, these sort of events, as well as the executive protection.
What was the most interesting bit of protection you worked on?
I would say that's something you can't really discuss, and it's something that any top executive protection officer shouldn't really announce.
Are you armed at this point?
No, I was never armed. No, generally you don't need to be armed nowadays. Right. There's different types of security, and you know, if you're going over or covert, and covert is when ultimately you're there.
Yeah, people don't know you're the security.
Not in the typical look that people go for, the guy in the black suit, the black shades, and what you see in the movie, the idiots. You know, generally a top security operative will not be dressed like that.
So you would have been in street clothes.
Street clothes, blend in,
right,
so that no one even knows you're there.
Just like a police spotter almost, looking for threats.
Well, yeah, and that's again where your advanced surveillance team comes into play. You'll have things like surveillance that are looking for potential threats, which you then report to the team that will be hands-on closer to that protection, you know, that officer as such, or celebrity, or whoever it may be. But celebrities generally go for the image, because celebrities want the guys in the black suits, and this is where that image is still come from. Because celebrities, it's all about look at me, I'm big and cool, I've got the biggest,
I've got an entourage,
baddest security team out there, and it's all about the image. You know, top things like Saudis and loads of Arabs and stuff, they don't want people to know that they're well off. And it's a lot of the clients that you'll get in London, Russians and different people, they don't want people to know as such. So you'll just blend in with the crowd and away you go.
How long did you do that for?
In and out, it's very a seasonal job, so it's not something you do full time. Again, you'll just do the odd little bit here and there, pays very well, but you just do it seasonal. Probably again for about a couple of years, in and out, I'd say.
So then how on earth do you get into business acquisitions?
Well, there's one more gap in between that. There's
This is an incredible life. We're literally just telling your life story, which is fascinating.
Before we even get into the motivational stuff, the reason. You know, before that, I even then started my own successful enforcement company.
Okay.
And that's sort of what led me to where I am now.
What's that?
Bailiffs.
Bailiffs, right, okay.
AKA bailiffs.
Okay.
Yeah. And, you know, and people don't realise how much wealth and money is actually made in that industry.
Right.
And it's such an industry that's sort of hidden. People have seen things like can't pay, take it away on the telly, and they think that's the real life. It isn't. You know, it's a lot more gruesome, a lot worse than what you see on the telly. The telly's sort of dramatised, and they'll only play the things that they want you to be seeing, you know.
I guess there's plenty of conflict.
Yes, yeah. And again, this is where the military, the security, you have to have that sort of discipline. Top enforcement officers, bailiffs have all come from that sort of industry. You have to have that discipline to...
How would you do it? Are you 6 o'clock in the morning, knock on the door, or...
That's right, yeah. 6 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, you know, all in, all out.
And how do you go about it? Are you given a contract to repossess something? Or how does it work?
Yeah, so you receive your contracts on behalf of the magistrate's court. That's who I was contracted to.
Okay.
So it could be a warrant of execution for, again, it could just be speeding ticket. A very common one, speeding ticket. Anything that's sort of a criminal offence. Nothing that's sort of, I never used to deal with things from...
Debt or something like that?
Well, county court writs and things like that, they generally deal with debts. Right. So credit cards, rent that's not been paid, that would be a county court writ. Magistrates, which I used to deal with, is anything that's a criminal offence. So anything where anyone's broken the law. So it could be assault, drugs, you know, domestic violence. So I was dealing with generally the bigger idiots out there, if that's a nice way of putting it.
So what are you trying to get? The cash? Or are you just trying to take kind of a value? You
want payment, you know, that's what you're there for, because you don't get paid until they pay, ultimately, you know. And the more stuff that you take, the more hassle it causes for you, because you then got to go to auction, you've got a bunch of paperwork to fill out. If they pay you, I get paid, and we all go home, and, you know, and that's the end of it. And again, this is where it comes in, because it's a very good sales role, and people don't realise, they think a bailiff, a salesman, but it is probably one of the hardest and toughest sales jobs that's out there. Because you're trying to
convince them to give you what you want them to give you.
You are the top negotiator you can imagine. The top successful ones like myself that were in the country, you are the best negotiator that exists. And the reason for that is because, you know, you're trying to convince them to give you, like you just said, You're trying to convince them to give you the payment. So it requires a lot of sympathy, and you're trying to find the buttons to push to trigger them to get the money. And 9 times out of 10, they don't have the money. You'll get the odd case where they do have the money and they just couldn't be asked to pay it, or they didn't want to. They thought they were bigger and better than the law. 9 times out of 10, they're totally broke. They're reliant on family, friends, whoever, to ask to borrow them the money to get them out of that situation. So you're trying to push the buttons to get them to ring mum, dad, brother, sister, auntie, uncle, your grandparents, or whoever it is. You're trying to find buttons to push to get them. So that causes you, at this point, you've got to search the house. You're looking for something, that's got to trigger that. Sometimes it can be something that's got an emotional value. So it could be a ring that was passed down from their gran. Right? The gran's passed away. Yeah. They want the ring. You now take that ring, and all of a sudden it sparks, the rage is coming on. How dare you take that, and they've totally changed their mindset at this point. And now you're like, now I've got you. Now I've just found out
now
your
we'll
weakness.
Work out what you want to give and what is a better way of doing it.
Of course, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So once you find the button, generally they will then be like, look, just leave it. Don't take that. I will ring me mum and dad. Just leave it. Okay, that's fine. I'll give you 10 minutes. I'll sit and patiently wait, otherwise the removal team's coming.
Frankly, a electronic payment to use far better than having to take a ring to auction.
Absolutely, yeah. If they pay me on the debit card, credit card,
great.
Done. Quicker, much easier. Got to go to auction, it's hassle. You don't want that.
Which I guess business acquisitions then is what businesses that are struggling and you go in and take over, is that?
Not necessarily, no. So in terms of business acquisitions, currently I'm going through a couple at the moment, and I'm buying pre-existing businesses.
Okay, yeah.
So it's not the case of buying a dead business. Some people go down that path and buy a business for £1.
Yeah.
It could be the case of...
Or out of administration or whatever you do.
Yeah, that's not my cup of tea. I'm looking for successful businesses that already succeed in which I can turn their revenue 10 times of what it is currently.
How varied is your portfolio?
Well, I'm looking for businesses generally that will turn over between 1 to 2 million per year.
Okay.
So anything that's within that region.
Any sort of business?
Any sort. Again, it's as long as it's... The problem is you've got certain businesses that are very profitable. Okay, you've got things like engineering, healthcare, and even things like construction. They're classed as like your boring businesses. There's stuff that are always there and will generally always continue.
Yeah.
Then you've got your exciting things like your tech, your
riskier.
cyber. Yeah, not necessarily riskier, but they're the more exciting stuff right now. But they're harder to come by because people aren't selling them because they know they're profitable.
Yeah.
Cyber security is a hot one at the moment. And again, I've been looking as well at things where I've got skills. So I'm either looking for hot topics or things where I might do well. So again, security companies, construction, something where I have experience and that I know and where I can put my skills into play. You're going to succeed
in what you know, aren't you, more than anything?
Yeah, but it does. Again, that doesn't matter whether I do or don't know it. I can pick it up straight away, and that's what we'll talk about in a moment when it comes to what I've wrote in my book and about the mindset. There's absolutely nothing you can't achieve in your life.
Well, that is the perfect place, because we are going to talk about the book and the motivational speaking with Shane Senior after this from Kygo and Whitney. Kygo, Whitney Houston, Higher Love on BBC Radio Shropshire, in conversation with Shane Senior, who you've just heard a bit of his life story. We scratched the surface, Shane, I think it's fair to say. But talk to me about what you do now then. You've published a book, you do motivational speaking, you obviously do your business, but you coach, almost life coach as well, is that fair?
Yeah, that's right. So, as you just mentioned, my first book is actually due to be launched on the 2nd of October. That is called Positive Thoughts, Positive Outcomes, Master the 14 Principles to Transform Your Life.
Okay.
And what I cover in that is pretty much everything that I speak about and everything that I coach my clients about. And the predominantly main subject, which is the life-changing point for me, really, is called the Law of Attraction. For the listeners out there that have never heard of it, the law of attraction is one of the many laws of this universe, very similar to the law of gravity. Most people have heard of the law of gravity, but yet they don't really know how it works. They don't really care how it works. They just know if you jump off a building, you're going to land and splat on that floor. Yeah. The law of attraction, on the other hand, is very similar. It's another law that can't be escaped from, can't be changed, can't be manipulated by anybody. But you will attract into your life everything that you think about. So this is from the moment of young childhood up until the age of whatever you are now, and again, going on into the future. So
is that literally thinking about what you want is the first step towards getting it and blocking out all of the thoughts contrary?
Yeah, it's not just a case of thinking about what you want. There's a lot more that goes into it than that. But primarily, whatever thoughts you are thinking about will determine the outcome of your life. Okay. And we have 35,000 thoughts per day, and statistics show that 80% of those thoughts are negative. Right. And it gets worse because then 95% of those thoughts get carried over to the next day. Okay. So As you can imagine, you start your day negative.
Spirals.
You start your Monday morning having a negative day. It spirals, and that's how you'll see people go from bad to worse throughout the course of the week, because those negative thoughts will become the outcome of your life. So, of course, positive thoughts are the main thing that you need to be having here. They are the primary focus that you need to have in your life. And it all starts with energy, because we are made out of energy. This is an abundant universe, and everything's made out of energy. Now, for generations and generations, people have referred to it in many religious ways, very similar to like how people call it God, Allah, your soul, the divine universe, whatever you want to call it. But the universe is all built up of energy.
So to you, that's all the same?
Yeah, and energy, and again, this is where the law of attraction comes into play. We are all energy. So what you think about will attract into you. So imagine yourself as just like a giant magnet, and you've been brought up to probably believe that opposites attract. Yeah, you've been brought up to bring the opposites attract. But reality is that like attracts like. Okay. So again, this is where it goes into whatever you think about will be attracted into your life. So you need to consciously become aware of every single thought that you have every day and correct it to something positive. Right. You're not trying to eliminate negative thoughts, because that's not going to happen. We all have bad days, bad moments, bad times. You will all have negative thoughts. It's inevitable. But you need to learn the skills, which is what I talk about in the book, which is what I speak about, which is what I coach about. These are all of the things that you need to learn to master to make these positive thoughts a lot easier and a lot more manageable.
And then do they become automatic?
It pretty much does become automatic, yeah. And if you're having a bad day or a bad moment, you instantly know how to correct that. So as an example, a real key one is meditation. Meditation and mindfulness are very popular things now. And a bit like myself, I always used to be very stressed. As a youngster, I was always quite stressed. And, again, it probably came from in my career, the military, whatever it was, from your upbringing. All of your emotional state of mind comes from your upbringing. So, I've learned over the course of the last few years, since I mastered the law of attraction, meditation has a huge factor in becoming a happier, more positive, vibrant energy as such. Yeah. So
what were the thoughts on your journey that were recurring, that were the most important ones for you to correct, do you think? In your own success?
Well, in success, in terms of, I think the problem is when you start off in your law of attraction journey, you need to see it work. Yeah. Because at first, when someone reads a book about it, when they hear someone talk about it, they think it's a load of nonsense. They think, what's this cuckoo rubbish? It's a load of, it doesn't work. Yeah. It doesn't add up. What's he on about? It's more religious rubbish, okay? Once you realise how scientific this is and how it actually works, and you see it unfold in front of you, that's when you really take the transformation to change your life. And it can be something simple, like one that even I tried when I first started out. I desired and thought about a person I hadn't seen for years. It was a guy I used to train with at the gym for many years. And I thought, it'd be good to see this guy. I haven't seen him probably for 4 years now, since we were training partners. Just thought about him for about a week, meditated on it, had my vision for it. Visualization is a very powerful one that I talk about as well. And then what happens is 4 days later, I actually go to the Cosford Air Show, and out of all of the 20,000 people that are there, I bump into him.
Wow.
Now, it's only something as simple as that, where when you see something like that unfold, you think, whoa, how's that actually happened? And you've all probably had this at some point in your life. You just weren't consciously aware of it. You've probably had that wow moment, like, I only just thought about that. How's that happened? Or
so for you, the mind is powerful enough to literally manipulate what's happening around you.
Our mind is powerful. We hold enough energy in our body to power a whole city. Yet most people would think this is nuts or think this is crazy. The energetic vibrations of the human body is absolutely phenomenal. And you have the power to completely change your life around for the good or for the worse. So if you're thinking about negative thoughts, and if you're surrounded with negative people, this has got to be one of the keys here.
Yeah. Well, they always say, don't they, if somebody's a negative in your life, get rid.
Absolutely, yeah. Friends, family, work colleagues. The amount of times we surround ourselves with negative friends, could be friends you've even brought up with from childhood, and you've stuck around with them thinking,
habit.
Yeah, it just becomes a habit. I've got to hang around with this guy. He's a cool kid from school, and he's no good for you. If he or she is negative,
you've got to be quite ruthless, then, haven't you?
You have to be. Yeah, you have to be. And it is better to have 0 positive friends than it is to have 10 negative friends. So
what have you, when you've had a client, and without giving away anything personal, what's been the biggest change you've seen in somebody?
I'd say probably going from being in debt to financially free.
Right.
That's got to be.
Which is massive in everyone's life.
Of course it is, yeah, of course it is. We've all been there at some point. Everyone's had struggles. I've lost tons of money on investments that have gone completely wrong, and you learn from your mistakes.
Are you good with that? and I say nobody enjoys it. But do you bounce back quickly?
Yes, yeah,
you do.
And I think that's something you learn again once you're going on your spiritual journey as such, and once you learn all of these things and how it can impact your life, you overcome these losses and you see them as strengths because again you learn from your mistakes and you don't make it again.
Yeah.
And again, every successful entrepreneur, business person has to go through these losses. And now, I might get irritated for a few hours. I might have a shout or a scream. I like to go and hit a punch bag.
Yeah.
I might go to the gym, lift a bunch of weights and get it out of the system. And this
Yeah.
is where it becomes, a vital thing. Get it out of your system. When people hold emotions of anger inside, you'll just blow up and erupt. And that's a very, very dangerous situation to be in, because that's how you'll either get sacked from your job.
Yeah.
You'll go through a breakup, you'll get arrested, whatever it may be. You'll go through a dramatic change in your life.
So where can people see you and learn more? Because we've just about sort of touched on the basics, but this is a whole course, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can contact me on my website, shanesenior.com. You can connect with me on social media. And it goes for anyone that's listening throughout the country, any international clients. I deal with clients internationally as well. And it's generally done via remote. So I generally use things like Zoom, Skype calls.
Okay.
And if I'm fortunate enough to get a local client, I'll happily meet at a place of interest. But
do you go into places?
Into places like...
Do you do businesses and I don't know, sports?
Yeah,
and
that's something I'm getting into now. Yeah. Well, I've actually, funny enough, got a speech at a school next week.
Oh, brilliant.
So all about the importance of reading and writing and educating youngsters to read and write, yeah.
You want to talk to as many people as possible. You said millions earlier.
Yeah.
That's key for you, isn't it? The ambition and the scope and trying to get this message out.
And again, this is where it becomes, again, a part of your reality. Now, I know I will go down in this planet once I'm gone, and once I pass away in the futures to come, I will go down as one of the most inspirational people that's ever lived.
Is this legacy for you?
It is legacy, yeah. And you have to, and this is where you have to speak in the present tense, because so many people will say things like, I will be successful, or I want that dream car, or I will get myself out of debt. If you actually really look at what you're saying there, you're always speaking in the future tense. Yeah. And guess what? The future never comes. So you have to always, you always have to speak in the present tense. Yeah, like I know I will be a huge success, and I know I am one of the biggest inspirational people that's walked this planet. And it's just a case of when more than anything. It's not the case of how, because I don't need to worry about the how. If you worry about the how will never come. Yeah,
that makes it happen.
That giant magnet makes it happen. It puts
I'm on board.
Puts me in situations that people wouldn't even believe to be true. Like today as an example. Today's been fantastic. You've invited me here, which has been great. I've had a lot of opportunities. I've had a guy invite me to a private entrepreneur's evening meal as well, which is there's loads of successful people there, and I might be going to the next event in 3 weeks' time where there's actually a top billionaire there who started a large franchise. I can't go into too much details yet about who he is or where it's going to be, but these opportunities are constantly coming because of the desires that I send out into this universe, the vibrations that I emit, and because I know my path, things arrive at my doorstep. And sometimes, again, you go through this back step. I might have a day where I'll set an ambition of doing something, and I'll either get rejected. And again, this is where going through your journey, you need to have a huge cope of dealing with rejection, because you will get tons of it. Yeah, I still get tons now because I'm still not well known yet. I get so many people that throw it in my face. Radio stations, as an example, newspapers, blogs, articles. Because I'm not known, people throw it in your face. No, we don't want you. We don't know who you are ultimately. And you've got to learn how to cope with that rejection to go on to success as such.
Shane, it's been fascinating to meet you and talk to you. Thank you very much for coming in.
Shane
Senior on BBC Radio Shropshire.